Welcome to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and a bi-weekly podcast where we play games and brew thoughtful conversations together. In case you're new or you need a refresher, we focus on one game a month and really percolate over it, if you will, so we can dive deep into its themes, its mechanics, and make those connections between what we're playing, our own lives, and hear one another's perspectives. And I'm Jenny Wyndham, and joining us in the cafe and sharing his perspective for the second month in a row, our first double feature, we have the founder and host of Tales from the Backlog and someone who has fully braved the Thunder Plains, Dave Jackson. How are you, Dave?
I'm great. The Thunder Plains, another name for the great state of Ohio. Thank you for having me back on, Jenny.
Exactly.
It's a real honor to be back for, like you said, month 2 of Geeks and Grounds, second half of Final Fantasy X. All the stuff we're going to talk about today. I'm super stoked.
Yes, and today's episode is a little bit different. So, the first episode of each month is usually our Indiescovery, and while we will be highlighting indie games that we're both really looking forward to, we also, since it's December, will be taking a little time and sharing our game of the year. Personal lists, we've each come up with our own game of the year sort of tally. And I'm excited to get into what we have similar, what we have different. And next episode, which will be our final episode for the year, will be the second half of that discussion, really deep diving the game. I'm super, super stoked because for me, that's where the super meaty stuff really comes into play. And we're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a very, very probably long discussion.
Yeah, everyone's going to need to
um,
grab a drink and a snack for that episode, for sure.
yeah, honestly, a full meal.
Yeah.
Just start with the appetizer, work your way through, chew really thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll still probably keep talking. So if you don't have Final Fantasy X already, be sure to pick it up and you can join the conversation over in Discord and via our newsletter. And you can find out all about that at geeksandgrounds.com. For folks who are watching the video, we've got Rosie here just planted in front of me for
It's great cat
attention.
content.
It is. She's perfect. Honestly, she's just can do no wrong. So other than geeksandgrounds.com, I think that's it for initial housekeeping stuff. Before we get into uh the Final Fantasy stuff that we want to talk about and the Indiescovery stuff that we want to talk about, we're going to hop into the pastry case. This is our grab bag of topics, including industry news, what else we've been engaging with outside of our main brew of Final Fantasy X. And the first quick note that I'm super excited to say is 2026 Geeks and Grounds community voting is closed. I will be looking and tallying everything up probably starting tonight, but working on the materials into the next week or two. And I will hopefully have everything ready for you by our next episode so that you can have plans to hopefully save some money and pick up the games you are looking forward to playing during the Steam Winter Sale. So hopefully they will all play beautifully into one another and we'll be sharing those games next episode. And I cannot wait. I haven't looked and seen the final results. I told myself I wouldn't peek
Mm.
because it's kind of like Christmas morning. So I will be looking at them tomorrow and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I was going to ask you after recording if I could get a sneak
Mhm.
peek, but I guess not. I guess I'll have to wait too, but I'm super excited as well.
I think we could probably get you a sneak peek. I bet you we can get one. The benefit of being on the podcast is you can have that sneak peek
Yeah,
for what's
and
been
I
going
don't know if you
on.
can hear, but my dog is super excited about the Geeks and Grounds lineup as well.
Yeah, oh my gosh. So that's a bit of housekeeping. All of that will be announced in the next episode. And now I'd like to go into the topic of the pastry case, and that is 2025 personal GOTYs, personal game of the year. I gave the challenge to Dave. I said, hey, time to pick your top 10. And we'll focus on the top 5, I would say. But before we share our personal lists, going from 10 up to number 1, I'm curious what you ended up using as your criteria. What were some of the things we talked a little bit about it last week, but as you made the list, did anything come up that you put into for consideration?
Yeah, I think so. When I was making my list, my top 2 were the most obvious picks, no question at all in my head. And then I started building out the rest of the list. And I think, if I remember right, last time I kind of talked about I build my game of the year list around personal impact rather than, zeitgeist, or that is the main consideration, I guess, is like when I look back, because it's often been months since I played these. It's often been months. You know how it is sometimes when you podcast or you make content or whatever. As soon as you're done, your brain kind of just empties out everything that you had to say. But after all of that has faded, what is still sticking with me when I look back? And I actually looked. I played a lot of 2025 games by my standards. I have like 25, which is a lot for me.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
usually much more skewed on like those older games, even if it's just games from last year that I missed, that I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
And this year there's just a lot that like jumped out, and I was like, ooh, I gotta play that. So the cutting it down to top 10 was tough. And the thing that really like, you know, was that deciding factor, especially when we got down to like 8, 9, 10, was like, what were those things that I still remember and still made that impact? What were the
Mm-hmm.
things that spurred good conversation? Um, yeah, I think that's the main thing for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I can't remember if I mentioned it on this podcast or in a different one, but for me, I do also go by personal impact. I have almost like two separate lists that I mentally keep. I have my, okay, here's the industry list where if I'm trying to guess the awards, if I'm trying to guess what the industry will say are the top games or their top, 10, here's what I think they will say. And that's sort of like me doing a meta of what the industry
Mm-hmm.
is kind of playing at. But this list for me was more based on what did I remember? What did I find myself recommending to people? If I was in conversation, did I talk about this game sort of unsolicited, or did I think about this game afterwards? So it's very similar to you, where I think some of these games may not be like Metacritic best games, but they're my best games.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say, I think the top, yeah, two and three, pretty predictable this year, which was strange because I feel like normally I struggle more with my top three than anything else.
Mm.
Usually it's the top three and then maybe the last like two with 9 and 8 just to see what gets on. But the top three for me, easy. Honestly,
Usually
is.
I almost never deliberate over what number one is. That's always pretty
Mm-hmm,
clear to me. But yeah, that kind of like once that like very obvious one is out of the way, then it's like, okay, we'll start making a list and things get rearranged a bunch. And by the time, I go to do my own game of the year podcast, I'll probably rearrange some of these things, but this is a good
mm-hmm.
a good start. I feel pretty good about the 10 that I've got here.
Yeah. So with that, let's kick off. What we're from 10, let's just do from 10 to 5
Yeah.
and like put a bookmark there and then speak to the ones that were your like second half of the top 10.
hmm so my number 10 was, do you want to do like me do my 10 to 6 and then you do your 10 to 6,
Yeah.
or me
Yeah.
10, you
That way,
10? Yeah.
let's do your 10 to 6.
Okay.
Whoops, just because I think there's like a nice flow. It's kind of nice because you can maybe see some of the thinking. I feel like maybe as you go through it. So I'd love to hear them in a row from you.
Okay. So my number 10 is South of Midnight, which that came out long enough ago that I was like, oh yeah, that was
Hmm.
2025. South of Midnight.
Yeah.
Number 9 is Sectori, which is a new game that has just
Yeah.
cannonballed into the top 10 over the last 2 weeks. Um, Number 8 is Monster Hunter Wilds. Number 7 is Citizen Sleeper 2. Another one, I think that came out in January. That was forever ago. And then
Mm.
number 6 is Many Nights a Whisper.
Hmm. That's a really great like second half of your top 10.
Yeah.
Um, I guess what got into like for the number 10 slot with South of Midnight, what pulled it in to
Yeah.
number 10 for you?
South of Midnight is a very flawed game, but the things that it does well, it does so well that that's what kept it in the top 10 is, when I'm thinking back, what is making the strongest impression on me? And the art, the music, the story in South of Midnight, the characters, the voice acting, all of those things are so strong that
Hmm.
the game's flaws have kind of faded out of memory, and that's what's left. Especially because it
Yeah.
was a game that came out a while ago. Like I think it was like February or March, something like that, when this game came out. And it's just one of those things that when we get to the end of the year and I think about like what's stuck in my memory, um, that art, that music, the story, it's all good enough. It deserves a spot in my top 10.
Hmm. And then I feel like uh Sectori is really interesting. I was surprised to see that one because it's so like relatively new.
Hmm.
For folks who may not have heard of it because it's a relatively new game, what kind of game is it?
Yeah. So Jenny or listeners, did you play Geometry Wars back in the day?
Yes. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, yes.
Yes. So Sectori is a new Geometry Wars game. It's not by the same people. It is by a developer who I believe worked at Housemarque, who are known for side-scrolling or twin-stick shooters, bullet hell games. Returnal, obviously, their most recent game.
Mhm.
A developer who worked there for a long, long time decided I'm going to make a new Geometry Wars game because they're not doing it, so I'm going to do it myself. And I loved Geometry Wars. Back in college, it was one of my favorite like pass the sticks games with my friends. And I've got the one that's on Steam. I It's fun to boot up and play. And Sectori is just it captures that so perfectly, and it has a really cool progression system, which I don't like. Geometry Wars had a little bit of that, but this is like multiple progression systems. It makes runs a little bit different. There's strategy to like what upgrades do I pick, and you have control over what upgrades you pick. So I feel like it's good to have something on the list that represents that like really video gamey, arcadey, loud, uh, explosions, great music type of gameplay. And Sectori is
Mhm.
just so perfect for that. So
Yeah.
it gets a spot on my list. It's really hard for me to not play it when I'm just like sitting in front of my computer. And then it's like, it's one of those games where a run of Sectori takes 5 to 10 minutes because I'm not great at it. But I
Mhm.
can't just stop after one run because it's really hard, but it always leaves me feeling like I can do better the next run. I know what went wrong.
Mhm.
I can do better next time. And so, yeah, number 9.
That's I have yeah, it's on my wish list, but I haven't been able to pick it up yet just because I'm trying to finish so many other games, but it was exciting to see you put it on there because I feel like I haven't also heard many people talking about it, ostensibly because everyone else is also trying to finish, I think, some of these other titles that maybe are more in the zeitgeist or conversation currently. And so, yeah, I was just very, very intrigued and very excited to see it there.
Yeah.
I think, do you have any notes on any of the others that you wanted to like briefly go over that like brought them in into your sort of second half of your top 10?
Um, I guess like the number 8 and number 7, Monster Hunter Wild,
Hmm.
Citizen Sleeper 2, those are picks that I had to like consciously be like, I know it was a long time ago, but I remember how much fun I had with Monster Hunter playing with my friends. And I remember how meaningful the story and mechanics of Citizen Sleeper 2 were to me. So
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it is kind of hard sometimes when we get to the end of the year to like really remember those games from January or like late
Hmm.
December from last year that were too late for game of the year consideration. Like it's so I made a point. Don't forget about those games. I loved both of those. And then Many
Yeah.
Nights a Whisper is a really short indie game that I think has gotten like a bit more steam lately. Like more and more people are
Yep.
talking about it. It's such an interesting game. It would make a like anyone out there who's looking for like a 1 hour meaningful experience. I think that this game's like really, really good. So
Hmm.
it's one that since I've been playing it, I've basically not stopped thinking about it, and that was months ago. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Many Nights of Whisper, I was happy to see because I believe it has a Indie Game Awards nomination. I'm forgetting which category, maybe in the bite-sized category.
Mm.
Um, and that made me really happy to see it get the nom and the nod there because it is super strong.
Hmm.
For my bottom, I feel bad saying bottom half of top 10, but I guess it is technically
Hmm.
the last five of the top 10. The first one I picked as my number 10, I guess, is Cabernet, which was a visual novel, sort of RPG meets RPG about a vampire who wakes up and must learn and adapt to being a vampire, essentially a human who has become a vampire. I have as my number 9 Final Fantasy Tactics: The Evilise Chronicles, which technically isn't a brand new game, but it is a new Steam ID, so I counted it. Um, Number 8 is Proximate, which I've talked a couple times on the podcast and in Discord. I've hyped that up. Number 7, I put Keep Driving. And for number 6, I put Look Outside, which that is maybe my most recent discovery that I have been so enamored by. Oh my gosh.
Nice. I so of these I've not played any of them. But I mean I played Final Fantasy Tactics years ago. And I've heard a lot
Mhm.
of good stuff about the remaster. And you know, we're in the middle of 2 months of Final Fantasy talk. We both like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
So I'm happy
What?
to see that that lived up to expectations. Was that your first time playing Tactics?
No, it's my first time in a very long time. I think it's maybe my second time playing the game. The
Okay.
first time being when I was in like middle school or high school, somewhere around there. I think high school. And I had loved the story, but I just never picked it up until now. And I mean, admittedly, it's not one that I'm the most familiar with because I only played it the one time, but oftentimes, especially with remasters and sort of like it kind of it added content, so there's an element that feels almost like it got close to a remake in the sense that they expanded on some storylines, they added some missions, so they did a really good job um, updating it for a current generation, but making it feel like it felt so nostalgic in a very good way.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe one of my favorite Final Fantasy updates, I guess you could call it, like
Hmm.
bringing it to a current generation that I've played with Final Fantasy X. You know, we've talked about how the 10.2 HD remaster, you know, stumbles a little bit with the visuals, for example, and they're like the faces look kind of funky, and it has been really, really lovely playing Final Fantasy Tactics and seeing the visuals and how it like it looks exactly how it did in my imagination and what I remembered, but it's because they like polished it and updated it in a way that they captured that nostalgia because I'm sure it is technically upscaled and like it is technically better.
Hmm.
Um, it's just and it's such a relevant game for right now. I think just like playing it, the story is so timely. You can't not appreciate like how I don't want to say forward thinking the writers were, but just I mean, we've been talking about cycles all month.
Hmm.
It's just incredible how cyclical a lot of what we think about as a society is, and so it's just been very fun to revisit that one.
That's good. You know that the Final Fantasy fans are picky, among
Yeah.
other things, and so I'm happy to see. I haven't really heard any bad things, negative takes
Mhm.
on the new version. So, and that's a game that
Me
people have been
neither.
asking for years to get brought forward. So that's cool.
Yeah. They've done a really, really lovely job. And I've also been kind of keeping an eye on like the subreddits and the community to see what the response has been because I tend to be relatively forgiving
Mm.
and relatively honestly oblivious to a lot, except of the most obvious like friction points in
Hmm.
games, especially with IPs that I just generally enjoy. But yeah, it's been really cool to see, not for once, but really, very rarely does the community say, like, as a whole, wow, this was a really good move. This feels really good. This sounds really good. And it seems like that's the consensus, which is
Yeah.
great.
Let's see other stuff on your list. I've heard great things about Keep Driving. Our
Hmm.
friends over at No Small Games did a really fun podcast about
Yeah,
that game. Um, Look Outside is another one people have been telling me to play. That one looks like the art in that one looks insane.
it's
So,
outstanding. It's like I don't want to compare it to Undertale in the sense that like set the expectation in terms of storyline or anything like that, but in the arena of as a player you feel like your choices are kind of making a difference and it's
Mm,
impacting how the characters in the world around you are going to act towards you. That for me reminded me of Undertale and the fact that it's pixel art and kind of turn based, like really good. So horror, but is horror, I will say, is
yeah.
very obviously, very overtly horror game. But yeah, look outside. I feel like it's starting kind of like how you were saying with Many a Night's a Whisper. People are starting to talk about it. Word on the streets coming out, and
Hmm.
so it's starting to gain traction. And I think that's happening right now with Look Outside, where it had such a quiet launch. I feel like um, the community that played it knew, but it wasn't really outside of its bubble. And I'm starting to see the bubble expand, which is
Hmm.
very exciting.
Yeah, your cool friend who likes cool games, they like Look Outside. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I was so excited to see them talk about it.
Hmm. Let's see. Tell me what. So what about? I don't know anything about Cabernet or Proximate. So what
Mhm.
about those? Made them make the cut.
Yeah, Cabernet was an interesting one because that's one that I played very early on in the year. Um, and I actually hadn't originally, when I was thinking about my top 10 list, it didn't originally come up. But when I was looking through my Steam list and like creating, I hand wrote a list of the games that I played so I could just make sure not to forget anything. When I thought back to how that game made me feel, and not only with its story and some of the ways that you played with like there's like ethical dilemmas, what do you do as someone who is now a vampire and has these powers to coerce people, and
Mm,
the politics of the vampire world itself. But it just brought back a lot of nostalgia for point and click adventures for me, which I have a very soft spot for, and we don't see too many of those really cross our path. And make a wave, or really make a high impact. And for me, it was just such a solid visual novel meets point and click adventure meets like RPG elements that I had such fondness thinking about it. And then once I remembered it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I was
hmm.
like, I have to put it up there.
Nice.
Um, Proximate was a discovery I had when I went to Australia for PAX Australia, and I saw it on the show floor, played the demo, and it had like the best of horror for me in terms of what it captured emotionally, in terms of dread and uncertainty and elements of like Soma,
Mm.
but without the ability to see, I guess.
Ah,
um,
you can't do that to me, Jenny. You can't invoke Soma
yeah,
like
I
that.
did it. I did it. I
Okay, all
think
right. Let me put that on the wish list.
thematically thematically a little bit different than Soma, but like there's something very Soma-esque about it as you're
Mm,
walking through this world, discovering sort of what has happened. And it's the kind of horror that I really appreciate, where it's more, again, horrors of the human condition, less than horrors of like an overt monster that is going to get you and
hmm.
like attack you. And the sort of the shtick, I guess, or like the hook is you can't see anything. You are working simply off of the UI, a map UI that is like a visor
Mm,
that a
okay.
company gives you, because the company says this is the technology you'll use. You'll only see what you need, as designated by, the corporate rule.
Mm.
And so it's just got a lot to it, and it only takes like 2 hours to play. So it's just really nice in that respect. And I keep recommending it to people. I can't stop talking about it. So I knew it had to be on the list for sure.
That's cool. Horror games that like mess with your vision and like just ask you to
Hmm.
trust some abstraction of what's actually out there, just
Yeah.
automatically like that much more effective. You made me think of Iron Lung with that, which is another one that
Yes.
like it's already
Definite
scary just
iron
because you
lung
can't
vibes.
see you can't see. So,
Yeah. I would say anything my mind comes up with is will be infinitely worse than
yes.
anything a developer could put in a game.
Yes.
And yeah, I think Iron Lung is a really great comp for this. If you like Iron Lung, I think this would be very much up your alley.
Okay.
Uh, and if you love like what is it, sort of environmental, not environmental storytelling, but when they have the lore, oh, I'm blanking the name. Like in Control, how a lot of the storytelling is done through the lore drops
Mm-hmm.
versus um overt narration. It's like that. So it's all about discovering the lore and what happens, which I love. A nice little mystery that you get to figure out.
Yeah, that sounds cool. That's definitely one that I'll put on the wish list, and I'll play in the next, you know, 6 to 24 months or something like that.
Yeah. The benefit, I keep telling people 2 hours. It's
Yeah,
2 hours of your time.
it's a
It's so
good
good.
sell. Yeah.
So now we're into top five territory.
Hmm.
Let's get into it because, yeah, I'm super excited to hear your top five.
Yeah. So before I say the top five, it's actually is interesting to me just to make a quick comparison here of the. I don't think I did like an official my most anticipated games of 2025 podcast or anything like that. But I know I had those conversations, and I know that none of the games in my top five were there. If they were just kind of like, oh yeah, I heard this is coming out, might be cool. Not like a, I know this is coming out, I have it bookmarked, day and date, I'll be there, I can't wait to play it. Not like
Hmm.
Monster Hunter and Citizen Sleeper 2, I knew I'd be playing those, I was excited, they lived up to the hype. There's some other stuff that was on that most anticipated list that didn't crack the top 10. But the point is, all my top fives were surprises, whether it was like a shadow drop that
Mm.
we didn't know would come out, or a game I knew was coming out but I didn't know it would hit me like this, or there's a couple on here that literally I had never heard of until it came out and people were like, "Oh, it's got a 93 on Open Critic. You should check this out." And it paid
Yeah.
off. So, with that being said, my top 5. Number 5 is Despelote. Number 4 is Wanderstop. Number 3 is Blueprints. Number 2 is Silk Song. And number 1 is Expedition 33. And Expedition 33 was that one. I knew it since like the first 2 hours of playing the game. It would be my favorite game. And it didn't let up after that. So that's my top 5. And I
Oh,
know that we've got some similarity in our top fives here.
you do. It's so funny because there was a part of me that's like, oh, I should challenge myself. Like, there's got to be other games. But at the end of the day, I was like, no, this list has to be reflective of like what I genuinely was most excited about and
Hmm.
most like engaged with. And I think it's telling that especially our top three are games that quite literally every outlet, most every person I talk to have these three games, at least one of them in their top three.
Hmm.
um so it's just a testament to just God, how good we have it,
Yes.
honestly,
Yep.
as we're playing these games. And I thought was similarly when I was looking at this list, there were a couple that were on my radar that I figured would probably rate very highly. I didn't know if they'd be on the top 10 list, but I knew I was very excited. Yeah, it's been really cool to see like, oh, this year was a lot of surprises in
Yeah.
some very cool ways.
Hmm.
So, my top five, starting with number five, is Despelote. Number four is Consume Me. Number three is Blueprints. Number two is Silk Song. And number one is Expedition 33. I
I'm
did
glad you
want to
finished
caveat.
Expedition 33 so you could officially put it at number 1.
Yes, I have been prioritizing it because I was like, I need to get to the ending, and fully have the experience. I don't think you need to, frankly.
Right.
Like you were saying, honestly, within the first few hours of the game, if this is for you, you will know it's for you. Um, but it feels really good that I got to finish it
Hmm.
before creating this list. I wanted to highlight because as a huge Deltarune fan, as maybe one of like I wouldn't say I'm one of the biggest fans, but it's one of the fandoms that I consider myself a part of. And I'm usually not a person who puts myself in fandoms. Um, Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 did launch this year, and I debated whether or not I wanted to put it in this list. But I decided because also I've been doing the same with Fields of Mystria, and I want to be consistent where I'm not putting it in a list unless it's out of early access
Hmm.
or has been fully launched, so I can at least in theory encounter the whole story. So that's honestly the only reason Deltarune is not in my top 10. So shout out to that. Um, I am also, even though we're not, we're basically at the end of the year, game wise, awards wise, I have started Root Trees.
Mm,
I have started Seance of Blake Manor, and I'm still working through Quartet. So there may be a last minute adjustment based on how far I get in those games and if there's enough there to get me to change an opinion. But
mhm,
yeah, I wanted to shout those out as well. Um, for Despelote, because I think this game is maybe one of the highest rated games, especially as for indies, especially for slice of life stories on Metacritic this year. But I feel like it has not broken out of the sort of indie bubble that we've seen, like Expedition 33 and Silksong has.
mhm.
So could you speak to why Despelote made it to your top five?
Yes, I would love to. So I think the reason that Despelote has not broken out the way those other games have is because it is, quote, less of a game than those other ones. It's a little bit harder to like sell what is the game in Despelote. But
Hmm.
Despelote is an interactive autobiographical work of art more so than a like a quote a game. It doesn't have combat, it doesn't have puzzles, it doesn't have, gamey stuff. But what it does is it takes you through a pivotal moment in a young kid's life, and it's an autobiographical. Again, the person who made the game is telling his own story. And
Hmm.
it to me, the thing that sold me on the game to play it, and then the thing that made it really hit for me is, I'm a huge sports fan, and I there's a lot of sports games out there where you play the sport, you play as the athletes and stuff like that. But there has never been a game that I've even heard of that tackles the culture around sports, the fandom,
Hmm.
what sports can mean to people who are going through difficult times, how it can bring a community together. And that's what Despelote is about. It's about a country, a people that are kind of in tumultuous times. And it's about them rallying around their national soccer team trying to make the World Cup. And I've experienced moments like that. Like you and I were talking before recording. Um, I come from a place where football is really important and the community really gets together when the football team is good. And there's been other teams that I root for with, much less frequent success. But anytime, like I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, I'll just say that. They're the worst, but there have been times in my life when they were not the worst. And the community really gets together and you share this moment with people when you have a sports team that you can root for. And when
Hmm.
that's happening, it's almost like nothing else matters. Like during the time when the game is happening, nothing else matters. It's just the game, the community banding together, and Despelote just captures that perfectly. So like if that is something that you've experienced in your life, or if it's something, if you're not a sports fan and you like want to know what is it about sports that brings people together like this, Despelote is awesome for that. It's also a good
Hmm.
coming of age story. It also, I love games that like take me to a different place in the world and just give me a little slice of their culture, the way of life, and things like that. Um, and this Despelote does that too. I feel so terrible. Is it Ecuador that's the country in the game?
I believe so, but let
I
me
think so.
double check.
Yes, I think so. I think the game takes place in Quito, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Ecuador. So I don't know anything about Ecuador. I've never been there before, and like I don't know what life is like. And the game is kind of recreating this guy's childhood neighborhood and the park where he used to kick a soccer ball around with friends and stuff like that. And I really value games that can bring that to me as well. So that is my that is my not so quick pitch for Despelote.
No, I think you spoke to why it's so incredible, like really effectively. Um, I agree wholeheartedly, and I come from this side and perspective that is not really engaged in sports.
Hmm.
Never really watched them as a kid. Always like I played a little bit, like very casually, but never considered myself like a fan of a team or followed any particular sport in general. Um, and it's funny because before this, we were talking about how one of the things I've always appreciated and like wished I could relate to is that feeling of like, oh my gosh, my team is playing and I'm so stoked and we're all going to be invested in it. And you're absolutely right. This game, it's like what's the soccer Ted Lasso. It kind
Oh,
of
okay.
did what for me, what Ted Lasso did was get me involved emotionally with the characters. And
Hmm.
so then I appreciated the game and why it meant something to them. And then it thus became something important to me. Despelote did something similarly, where through the eyes of this character that you play, this kid, through the eyes of the community, I saw what the game meant to them.
Hmm.
Thus, I cared about the game. And it was so powerful to play. And yeah, it makes me I think people, yeah, like you said, see the fact that it's like relatively straightforward. There's nothing too complex. You're mostly just exploring and talking, kicking a ball around, and there's no overt like this is the mechanic and this is the point that you will get and like a
Hmm.
boss you'll fight. But I think it's such a beautiful work of art, and I'm so happy that it was made.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Like, I think, your podcast, my podcast, we spend a lot of time talking about narrative based games. And this is one of those examples of like how a narrative can be best told through a video game. Like you could
Hmm.
do a Despelote movie, it would be good. I have no doubt of that. But putting yourself in that character's shoes and like doing what the little kid would do during this thing and experiencing it through their eyes is I mean that's one of the best things that video games can do. So Despelote really made a strong impact. It really reminded me of when I was living in South Korea. Um, the same World Cup that they're talking about in Despelote, the 2002 World Cup.
Hmm.
That was the one in Korea and Japan, and the South Korean team made like a huge, wonderful run in front of their home fans, and people still talk about it to this day. Like it meant so
Hmm.
much to them over there that I wasn't there for that, but I met so many people who had like, if we got on the subject of soccer, they were gonna bring up that World Cup, and
Hmm.
so that's a real lived experience for so many people. And for a game to capture that so well, there's some cool like tricks that it has too. I won't spoil, but cool tricks
Hmm.
that it has. It's just when I was making my list, this was my top games were the ones that like compelled me to keep playing and like drew me in from every angle, we'll say. And
Hmm.
then Despelote was the one where it was like, this has to be in the top five because it it like it's a lot more contained. It's a lot more self-contained than those other games, I feel like, but
Hmm.
it was so good at what it did. Like
Yeah.
I will be the person, hopefully I'll be that cool friend telling people like you got to check out Despelote whether you like sports or not.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone should check it out. And it's another like relatively like you said, it's compact both in its narrative structure, but it's also not super long. So it's another one
Mhm.
that you can play and finish. And I think unlike some of the other games in our top five, Blueprints, Silksong,
Yeah.
um, you can finish it within a reasonable time and like feel like you haven't uh, I feel like some games I play them and I sometimes think about what else I could be playing, like, oh, in playing this, I'm not playing something else. Despelote is one of those kind of games where I'm like, I feel like I can play it and I'm not missing a game playing this, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense.
Yeah, well, it also just goes to show that like just because Despelote is an hour and a half long doesn't mean that you won't remember it the rest of your life. Just like,
Yeah.
if you spent 200 hours playing Blueprints, you should. I hope you remember that
I
for the
hope you're
rest of your
okay.
life. Yeah, I hope you're
Yeah.
okay. Despelote has the staying power, even though it's the length of a movie.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. For your number four, Wander Stop, I
Yes.
will admit I was very pleased to see that. Full disclosure to everyone, I am on the Wander Stop team But I'd love to hear more about why that one made it into number 4.
Yes, and I didn't just put it on the list because I knew I'd be talking to you about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It, you
I'll
know,
pay you afterwards.
yes, exactly. I
Yeah.
will send you my
The
my PayPal info. Yeah.
yeah, the
Um,
check is incoming.
so I think one of the most telling things for Wanderstop for me is because it's a story that is, on its surface, it's about someone who's burned out and, you know, they're like not actively trying to recover from it, but that's what it becomes. It becomes the process of recovery and how to move forward and things like that. And the most telling thing for me was when Wanderstop dropped, everybody I know who reviews games professionally or as a semi-professional or as a hobby like I do, everyone was like, "Oh my god, this game is just seeing right through me. Like I see myself everywhere I look in this game." And everyone was basically saying that. And even people, I guess, not to just limit it to games people, but I think that we all feel some semblance of burnout, whether it's through, you have to work really hard to make ends meet, or you've chosen to do a weekly podcast like I have. Um, we all have a little bit of that. And I think that the game connected with everyone so strongly because we could see ourselves in Alta as she's um first of all, not accepting that there's something wrong, that all she needs to do is push forward, and that's the way to get through it, is just I just got to work harder. And that thing we tell ourselves, like, just 2 more weeks, after this 2 weeks things will calm down, everything will
Mhm.
be cool after that. And then those 2 weeks are over and it's like, all right, just 2 more weeks, and then on and on and on we go. um and the game just really cut into that. So I think that the way it connected with people, the way it connected with me, um, that's the main reason why. But I also think that it's a really smart, I don't want to say criticism, but a smart commentary on certain types of video games and video games in general. And just what do I expect when I sit down to play a video game? And this is one of the things that I kind of expected because I know the creative minds behind this game. I know what they've
Mhm.
made before, right? So I know there's going to be something. But I really appreciated like that. It's almost like the game saying, like, you come into this with so many expectations about what this is going to be, and then you're going to bash up against that because the game is not that. And I've heard a lot of people be like, I don't like how aimless it is, or I don't, it's I'm struggling with, like, what am I supposed to do during this time? And
Mm.
I think that it's not those people's fault that they feel that way. Video games have conditioned us to approach them in a certain way and expect certain things. And so when a game has a smart take on those things, it's nice to see too. So um I really really liked this. It was a game. I did a podcast with two other people. All three of us were just like, I was like very emotional playing this game because it just felt like it cut so deep into those things I tell myself, those experiences that I have. So yeah, I loved it. And
Yeah.
I will say, it is on its surface, gather ingredients, make tea type of game. I don't play those games. That's not a genre of game that I play. And I think the fact that Wanderstop is like doing interesting things with that is the reason why I was able to connect with it the way that I did. So yeah, that's all
Oh,
for now.
yeah. Oh, I appreciate hearing that. And like, honestly, I hope the team here, I might have to send them this clip because it is just like, it's as from the perspective of someone who was a part of helping make it and bring it into the world,
Hmm.
essentially. And bring it to people to play. Um, it's been really, really heartwarming. At first, I honestly went through a little mini crisis because I realized just how it was one of those things where people reacted so strongly and I was both very happy about it, but it made me really sad for a
Yeah.
while because I was like, "Oh my God, like we all like I want us all to have time
Yeah.
to rest and like be like have time to heal and be better to ourselves and kinder to ourselves." And I think what I appreciate is Wanderstop, like you said, at the surface is about this, you can take it as a game about burnout, but I think it does go a bit deeper than that. And it's been really nice to see like the ways that you and all the other folks have been engaging with it because, yeah, I think it's one of those games where it can be kind of like discomforting to play and uncomfortable in the sense that it doesn't necessarily do what you expect. And not just in terms of like the cozy game genre, but just as a video game, it just has so much free time. And if it requires you, which I appreciate, because games like in different ways, games like One Shot and I think Deltarune and Undertale do something similar where it requires you to be invested in it to get something out of it. Whereas
Hmm.
I think some games you can play and you can get what they're trying to say without personally like being really invested. But I think this is one where if you like fully dive in, that's when you get the most out of this game. I guess you could argue that for anything, but it just felt very apparent to me when seeing how people reacted, like who were the people who like really dove in and like
Hmm.
did their own tea journals and did their own reflections, and things like that.
Yeah, it's nice to have a game that is telling me, um not only is it okay to slow down and like not try to rush through this, but like you can't do anything but slow down and take your
Mm-hmm.
time. And it's okay to make yourself a cup of tea and go sit on a bench and listen to a little internal monologue. Whereas like I play a lot of games every year, you play a lot of games every year. I get in this tendency sometimes where it's like, well, I've got a couple hours to play. I want to make a bunch of progress in this game tonight. And I need to make that progress because I got a recording in 2 weeks and then I got to start this other game. And this other
Mm-hmm.
game comes out in, a week after that. So I got to be ready for that. I got to clear the decks for that. And so we get in this, this mode where we're like Pac-Man just gobbling up games, just
Mm-hmm.
consume, consume, consume. And it can take a real effort to like slow down and like soak it in. And what I really liked how Wanderstop was like, not only is that the best way to play this game, it's the only way to play this game. You're not going to rush through this game.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are no customers. So what are you going to do now, Dave? And I really
Yeah.
like the way that they just make it a point, like, and that, I mean, that reinforces all of the story themes too, to make me do that as well. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's why it's in the top 5, because it's something that all aspects of it are working toward that common goal and they all
Mm-hmm.
reinforce each other really well.
Yeah.
Also Boro MVP, MVP
Yeah.
character of 2025. We all need more Boros in our life.
We do. We need to find a Boro for everyone
Yeah.
to have as support. It's funny with your number four being, I think this more like personally, they're all personally affecting, but I think there's like a personal and more emotional like connection that you have with Wanderstop in particular that feels different than, the other games that we've talked about on your list
Hmm.
thus far. And what's interesting is that my number four, which was Consume Me,
Yeah.
occupied a lot of that same space where Consume Me made me feel very seen as a game in ways that were really uncomfortable,
Hmm.
and really cathartic that I had been looking forward to this game for a long time, but playing it in its entirety was a doozy. Um, it was like really tough at some times, at some points in time in the game's narrative, but Consume Me is a game that addresses like diet culture and disordered eating and fat phobia and like all through the lens of a teenage girl when everything is like heightened to the max for any teen. I feel
Hmm.
like if you're a teenager, everything is like plus 20, in terms of what you're doing in terms of reacting to things. And what I loved is Consume Me, A, puts kind of like a roguelike format and twist to sort of this. You play mini games and you're trying to reach certain goals, and if you don't, it goes back roguelike style. And you can kind of give yourself buffs to help make the next run easier or try it again. But I appreciated that it's like here's a roguelike. It doesn't look like one, but it is. And the art is outlandish and hilarious and honest in a way that feels like, oh my gosh, it's ugly, but it's also cute. And in a lot of that, it feels just very real. And I highly recommend it if you're able to like go through those topic,
Hmm.
I guess, the content of it. But ultimately, when I played it, I felt like it addressed um, the ideas of like what it means to be a sort of an overachiever or to place pressure on yourself, and similar, I guess, to Wonderstop in a lot of ways. Um, and what does that look like, and what happens when you push yourself to these like maximum capabilities? And when you find success, is it really success?
Mm.
Like at the cost of, what? So, yeah, outstanding game. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to play it or finish it
I
uh,
haven't.
as of
It's
now.
been on my wish list. Something that I'm interested in playing again. Kind of like Despelote, like a window into somebody else's experience, but that's also going to
Hmm.
mirror parts of my own experience. I have a personal history with weight issues and body image issues and things like that. So even those like surface level things are like, yeah, even though I was never a teenage girl, I can connect with part of the
Hmm.
experience. That's the games like this tap into universal experience, even if you're
Yeah.
not like 100% in that position, like some people would be. So, I
Yeah.
mean, the little mini games and stuff that looks intriguing to me too. I enjoyed the developers like social media
Hmm.
posting
Yeah.
about the game. That was really entertaining. So yeah, it's something I definitely have on my radar. Is just so many games. There's for every I
I know.
played 25 games, there's 50 that I could list that I wish I had time to play.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And again, it's like this list of top 10. I would say my top, if I didn't give point scores, but it's as if like my next top 20 probably differentiated by a point, essentially. It's
Yeah.
just like the barest of differences to be on this list, except probably for both of us, the top three.
Yeah.
Again, to remind folks, we had at number three for both of us Blueprints, number two was Silksong, and number one is Expedition 33.
Hmm.
Blueprints we've talked about extensively, and I
Yes.
think if folks really want to hear the super deep cuts of our thoughts, they can find it at Tales from the Backlog.
Yeah. Yeah, Jenny was kind enough to give me like 3 hours of her time to talk about blueprints and, you know, just scratch the surface in some ways because there's so much going on
Hmm.
in that game. But the top three for me were the games that like I was thinking about like what were the games that I was like obsessed with when I was
Yeah.
playing, and they paid off on that obsession. And I don't say obsession uh in like a derogatory like, sorry to pick on this, but like a Vampire Survivors sort of way where it's like, I know my
Mm,
brain's being manipulated by this right now.
right.
Like I like Vampire Survivors a lot, but they're manipulating my brain in that game. These
Hmm.
three were the ones that I was like, I had a paper notebook full of notes and blueprints, and I was like thinking about
Yes.
it when I was away from my computer. And it's the the unfolding mystery of blueprints is so masterfully done. We talked a lot on my show about the friction points that a lot of people run into with blueprints, where like, I get it, but that wasn't even close to enough to keep me away from trying to pull back those layers of the mystery. And I didn't even get close to getting to the deepest parts of it. I got to like, you know, the part just below the surface of the iceberg, we'll say,
Hmm.
in my
Hmm.
playthrough. But I really loved it. And then like the neat little surprise as I went along was I thought the story got stronger and stronger the more I played. When at the beginning of the game, I didn't even know the game would have a story like worth paying
Hmm.
attention to. So yeah, blueprints, just a real magical type of experience. One that, not everybody was willing to put up with those pain points, but it both of us, I guess, did.
Yeah. No, it is one of those games where I'll put it in the category of like Outer Wilds, where I think for me it is S tier, but I also know for others it could be like an absolute dud,
Hmm.
just because it does cater to a very specific type of play style and type of thinking. I think the first few hours of Blueprints are really approachable for people who may want to dabble in puzzle games like this. I will say beyond like the next layer and beyond the next layer, that's where it can go a little off the rails. And I will say it caters very specifically to a certain type of player. But for that reason, I do also love that it does that, because as one of those players, I wholeheartedly appreciate everything that they laid down in terms of the puzzles. I was also surprised that there was a story and that it did go the directions that it did. And yeah, I also had a Blueprints notebook that I just sort of compulsively would take out and look even when I wasn't playing the game, and just sort of sit there and think about what I would do next and plan out my runs. And
Hmm.
any game that gets you thinking like that, at least for me, it's got to be up there in the top 5 for sure.
Yeah. There's something magical about a game that asks you to get out a notebook and pen
Mhm.
and take your own notes, draw your own maps, whatever it is. Like I missed that era of like PC RPGs that asked you to
Yeah.
like draw your own maps as you play. I've since gone back and like tried them out, and it's kind of fun to draw your own map. It's kind of fun to make notes. It's fun to like, I got to an area in Blueprints and I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get back here. I'm literally going to copy this map I found in the game so that I can strategize the next time I get here.
Yeah.
Um, I really like that. And like I have I have this just real sicko's notebook right now of
Yes.
Lorelei and the Laser Eyes notes that go into
Oh,
Blueprints notes that go into Heaven's Vault notes. And I'm
hell
like,
yeah.
it's I don't know. I don't know what the next game is that's going to make me bust out that notebook, but I'm
Mhm.
excited for it. I think Blueprints especially has kind of like awoken that side of me that like I like taking I like doing that. I don't want to take notes in my phone or in a Google Doc anymore. I want to have that physical notebook and write that stuff down.
Mhm. Um Okay, I have a game where I have a prediction. I don't know if it'll be the next like blueprints, but I'm trying to scroll. I may have to just like silently go through it and just say later what it is. But there is a game that I played at PAX Australia where I was like, oh,
Ooh.
this could this could be the next puzzle game sicko like experience.
Mhm.
And I am quickly scrolling and I cannot find it. So I'll keep gradually looking, and if I can square away what it is, I will just like make sure to say it before
Okay.
we close out the podcast. But
Nice.
there is a puzzle game that, oh, here it is. It's called Nonolith.
Okay.
uh, I found it at PAX Rising. I don't think it has a Steam page even yet, but it is a game that takes nonograms, like the 3 by 3 number puzzles,
Uh-huh.
and you use that to manipulate the world, and you can go in and out of a giant nonogram. Um, I don't know what the story is. I don't know. There is a story. You're just trying to escape the nonolith. And that's kind of it. And I played the demo and it's just entrancing, and there's not much about it online. I feel like we need to just try to remember that, because it may be one of the puzzle games next year that we pay attention to.
Okay. So just to be clear, when you say nonograms, you mean Picross, right?
Yes, yeah, I
Oh
think
my
Picross
god.
is like the legally uh what is it? It's like the Kleenex versus tissue paper.
Right, right, right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
Picross might be my
nonograms, yeah.
favorite kind of puzzle. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
I'm gonna have to keep an eye on this. If it has no Steam page, I'm gonna have to write it down in my actual notebook to remember it.
yeah, I'm trying to find, because I know it's called Nonolith. It's on the PAX Australia website, but when you click on the game link, the page doesn't work anymore. And I know that there's no Steam page. So I will try and find some sort of link to the dev or something to share in the newsletter, but it's like it just was such a fun demo, and I think that's
Ooh,
something to keep an eye
I
on.
think I found it on Steam.
Oh,
Unless
hell
there's another
yeah.
game called Nonolith. It says Q4 2026
Oh, hell
release.
yeah.
So maybe that's
Nonolith.
it.
Tried I type in Nonolith on Steam and it gives me monolith, and
Right.
I'm like, no, stop.
I promise you I can spell. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. And there's a demo that is coming out on December 9th.
Okay.
So actually, you will all be able to experience the demo for it very soon. That's very
Sick.
exciting.
Love
Oh my
that.
gosh. Yeah. So it plays with again the 3x3 square, and you use it to manipulate the environment, solve puzzles, and there seems to be just like a lot of secrets and potential lore. It may be more like Animal Well, where it's not got an overt like story, but just things for you
hmm
to just ascertain about the world as a whole. Yeah, I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Sick. Yeah. Instant wish list again.
Yeah. That is, I think, blueprints we've covered pretty well,
Yeah.
and bonus monolith game recommendation in there. Uh, Silk Song,
Yes. Silk Song.
one of the
I
most highly anticipated games maybe ever.
hmm
Uh, and what I find really fascinating is I don't know. I find it fascinating is at number two. It's honestly wild to me that it's at
hmm
number two. I'm curious, like clearly it is an outstanding game. Clearly it is best in class, one of the strongest sort of I would say like what is it? Metroidvania, I guess you'd
hmm
kind of call it, platformer. Um Not to be negative, but what put it at number 2 maybe versus number 1 for you? What was a differentiator?
If Expedition 33 came out in a different year, Silk Song would have been the clear number one.
Yeah.
It just ran into, one of my favorite games I've ever played. So no
Mhm.
shade at all to Silk Song. It's kind of like last year when it didn't matter what else came out. 1000 Times Resist was gonna be my favorite game.
Yeah.
Literally anything else could have come out in that year. It wouldn't have been number one. So the reason Silk Song is so high is number one, Hollow Knight was one of my favorite games ever. It was my favorite Metroidvania ever, and Silk Song is just builds on the foundation of Hollow Knight in basically every direction. And
Mhm.
like that kind of makes sense to me because it started as a DLC for Hollow Knight and then outgrew that into its own thing. Part of the reason why it starts out so much more difficult than the early levels in Hollow Knight, and I actually like so the things that I thought were going to be good were good. Platforming feels
Mhm.
great. Bosses are really well designed. Combat, everything is snappy, the controls are amazing, it's everything works exactly the way that you think it should work. I expected all of that. I expected great music. I got great music. I didn't expect such a at on one hand more approachable, but on the other hand I think more affecting and just generally better story than Hollow
Mhm.
Knight. I think Hollow Knight has an interesting story, but it was not one that I could like really follow without the moss bags of the world.
Right.
um Silk Song is like it's woven into everything, the idea of the pilgrimage, the idea of the citadel, how the people in Farloom, but specifically the pilgrims, how they're all taken advantage at every turn. The difficulty feeds into this, like it's supposed to be an arduous pilgrimage, and it all just works really really well. I never start up a Metroidvania being like, I'm going to come out of this with characters that I really love. It's not a
Mhm.
genre where I expect that, but I think Hornet's an incredible character. Obviously everyone loves Sherma, so Sherma's
Yeah.
another great like MVP NPC of the year, and it paid off on everything that I expected, and then gave me a bunch of stuff that I didn't expect.
Mhm.
So really really liked it. I don't know about you, like I built up this narrative in my head that just because it was radio silent for so long from Team Cherry, and the fact that like it had been so long, like since the initial like ideas Xbox said it was going to come out years ago and it didn't come out, I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, it's in development hell, they've got scope creep, it's going to be a mess when it comes out.
Hmm.
And it just wasn't. It's really masterfully made. Like there's some small little things that I'm like, I don't know why you did it that way, but nothing that could ever approach like making me think less of the game as a whole.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm like, I mean, technically they did have scope creep. They just
Right.
had the money and time
Right,
to
exactly.
to
They had the
allow that.
privilege to,
Yeah.
yeah, to
to
to just,
to make
okay,
it
we're rolling
happen.
with the scope creep.
Exactly. So I definitely think they did have scope creep, but at the same time, I mean, it is it is just like a pinnacle of what this team can do. It's funny because I remember starting it and seeing other folks be like, "Oh, the songs aren't as good," or "Oh, I'm like not feeling as connected to this world." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, because you've had Hollow Knight for how many years, and you've
Hmm.
only just met this world and these characters. Like, is the more time you invest in this, you will, I think, feel that connection." And I think, um, I personally have definitely developed that connection with Silk Song in the ways that I did with Hollow Knight, partially because, like you said, the high difficulty, um, you kind of have to it requires you to practice. It requires you to take the time to pay attention. When you play, you don't really have the opportunity, at least for me. I can never play if I'm just like, let me just have a chill evening of not
Mm,
paying attention to my, and like Power Wash. That's my let me
yeah.
just zone out game. You don't have
Hmm.
to do anything and you still find success eventually. This is a game you have to pay attention to, and I think it really rewards that. And for me, I appreciate that in games. Um, I love, like you said, all of the characters. I've been thinking a lot about how like there's a lot of like women in Silk Song. Like they're all insects, but they're all like women insects. And
Yeah.
it's been really cool to start thinking about what that means in terms of the story. And that was something I didn't really expect. I don't know. It just wasn't something I even thought about
Hmm.
necessarily. And I find myself already thinking back to favorite boss battles and like appreciating and this is how you know it's good because I'm not usually a fan of combat necessarily. Like I like combat, but turn-based is kind of where my heart
Hmm.
goes, and this sort of precision combat, learning patterns, I've grown to appreciate it, but it's not something that comes easily to me, and it's not something I've like inherently loved as a player. But this follows in the tradition of Hollow Knight, where I am so excited to learn the patterns of each boss, to appreciate them, and then to be able to reminisce and be like, oh man, like there's a, I won't say too much in the way of spoilers, but there is a clockwork kind of boss with two characters that you
Hmm.
fight that I was honestly almost moved to tears at the end. It got me choked up a little bit because of the storytelling that happened through the boss fight. And so
Hmm.
you're learning the patterns, seeing the story of this mini arc of this boss you're fighting, and I was like, this is just absolute genius. Like
Yeah.
this is incredible.
Yeah,
Oh.
they do such a good job of making those patterns so recognizable and fair. Every boss has ways that you can punish them if you learn the patterns, and if you execute, you will get your chance to fight back. And I think when I think of like developers who've made their names doing these really hard boss fights that are built around recognizing patterns and safe times to then counterattack and stuff like that, um, I think that From Software earned their reputation making boss fights like that, and they have gone in a direction that I think is a little bit too far as their
Mm,
difficulty in their modern games with their bosses. And Silksong, I can't think of any boss fight where I was like, I don't know what they want from me here. Like they were hard. The final boss of like the final boss in Silksong took me multiple hours of attempts, but I always
Mhm.
felt like I could see the path. I always knew, like, I know that attack. I just, I missed a button, or like I got greedy or something like
Mhm.
that. There was really nothing that I can think of where I was like, I just don't see the matrix. I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do here. And that's, I mean, for a game as punishing as Silksong is, it's really masterful how, yes, it's punishing, yes, it's really difficult, but it controls so tightly. You can see the patterns, you can see if it's a tough platforming section, you can see what you have
Right.
to do. It's just you got to execute, you got to learn, and you have to, like, I know when to walk away and take a break sometimes. That's a good tip, I guess, as well. But
Yeah.
um
I
yeah,
call it
it's
marinating, just letting it
yes.
marinate in you for a little bit before you
Yeah.
go back.
I call it taking a walk to let the steam stop coming out of my ears. But um, one thing that I think is kind of telling is I started the Steel Soul mode, I think it's called, which is the permadeath
Mhm.
mode on Silksong, during a
Yeah.
a charity stream that I was doing, and I didn't die in the whole 3 hours that I
Oh
streamed,
my god.
because I was like, the game taught me how to play, and now this is my playground. I had a few
Wow.
close calls, but and like I'm gonna pick it up and play more of that, and I'll lose it soon, I bet. But
Mhm.
like even on permadeath mode, I got pretty far into the game without dying, and it's because the game taught me how to play.
That's incredible. I cannot say that I'm that good.
I don't mean it as a brag.
uh,
It's more like they
no,
did
I
such a good
think
job.
you should absolutely brag about that because that's really cool. But also I think it is a testament to the ways that you can design and make it feel possible.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan of challenge, but I don't like it when I can't like frankly, the getting over with Bennett Foddy for me, like that for
Mm,
me was like, oh, this is I understand it's not meant to feel good. You're meant to be
yeah.
dealt these horrible moments where you lose everything. And for me, that's not the kind of game that's because you can learn in that game, but there's an element of like sort of luck that I would say happens with some of the physics and sort of the just how that game is designed. Whereas I feel like Silk Song, while initially it can feel random and it is punishing, if you slow down, it does have, like you said, a clear path forward. Um, I do wish, simply because I know so many people, and honestly, looking at the top three games in our list, maybe with slight exception to Expedition 33, I think Blueprints and Silksong, my one sort of like sticking point is that they are very gamer games
Mm,
where I feel like unless you have played other games of that genre, you probably couldn't like say I'm starting to play games in the year 2025 and I want to try Silksong. I mean, you could, and with certain temperaments and skill levels, like I think it's a possible game to
hmm.
do. Same with Blueprints, but for the average, like more casual player or player who hasn't seen these genres before, I don't necessarily think they're the best places to start. And for me, I wish there were ways that, like Silk Song specifically, did have options for
Hmm.
players to make things a little bit simpler or to Celeste style, like modify elements of the combat or
Hmm.
modify elements of the platforming to help bring people in. And then you can toggle it off later. But that's my one, like, oh, I wish some of these games were a little bit more approachable simply because they're so good. And I personally don't think adding those options detracts from the experience as a whole, but that's my personal soapbox.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that part of me thinks that the difficulty should be part of the experience in Silksong because it's
Mhm.
thematically relevant. That you should have a hard time at some point. But what constitutes a hard time for me is different from you, is different from the next person, and
Yeah.
there is a way to still have a hard time but be able to make progress.
Mhm.
Lies of P basically erased any. I used to think like if these really hard games had difficulty modes, that I would switch it down at the first sign of friction, because I'm like, I don't, as much as I like the boss fights, I don't want to fight the same boss for hours and hours and hours. In most games, in Silksong, I
Hmm.
kind of liked it. Um,
Yeah.
Lies of P kind of taught me like that's not actually the case. I never changed the difficulty in Lies of P, and that game's really hard, and it has like 5 difficulty modes, and the one that it launched with is the hardest one. They added like 3 lower difficulty modes after launch.
Hmm.
So that's not really an argument anymore. It's just like I think that I do think the difficulty serves a purpose in a lot of games, but difficulty is not the same for everybody. So let people find that sweet spot for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to frame it. And again, I don't think it takes away from how good Silksong is. Like I had it on my number two. Obviously, I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
But it just comes from a place from like I wish um I remember when Celeste came out and I was able to recommend it to everyone, even
yeah,
my friends who were like, "Oh, I've never played video game like this. Can I play it? I heard it's really hard." And I was like, "Oh, look at all these toggles. Look,
hmm,
you can like make it however you want to make it." And ever since that, like for me, Celeste is the gold standard of like just letting people experience a game how they want to. And I just wish I wish I could recommend Silk Song to some of my friends,
hmm,
because it's so beautiful and the story is so good. The world is amazing, and I know not everyone will be able to access it, and that's like my one sadness for the
right.
team.
Yeah. Well, the number one game on both of our lists does
Hmm.
give people the option to toggle difficulty and create an experience that is going to let you experience the story and, whatever taste of the combat that is right for you. Um, I've been leading these off. I'm curious. You just finished
Yeah.
this. So, what was it that put Claire Obscure at number one for you?
I think it single-handedly got me crying the most out of any game this year. Sobbed the most tears from
Mm-hmm.
playing this game. Um, I grew up on RPGs. Like that is my RPGs and farming sims are my bread and butter, essentially for like the foundation of who I am as a player of games. Expedition 33. And so for me, this number one spot is filled definitely with a lot of nostalgia because I think it captured in its heart a lot of what I really love about turn based RPGs. Um, Mechanically, the combat is exciting. I think it honestly improves personally. I think it improves on some of the turn based combat in the sense of it creates these fun build situations where you're mixing and matching the Pictos and the Lumina to create these builds for your characters to really play how you'd like to play stylistically. Um, Having to pay attention and dodge and parry, which was the bane of my existence, now that I have it and understand like the sound cues and the visual cues, it became such a joy to discover those by the end. And narratively, this is a game. I mean, we've been playing Final Fantasy X, which is one of my all times. This is a game about a group of people who become family, who clearly like care for each other, who love each other, and they're fighting like Final Fantasy X, this cataclysm that keeps happening, and these sort of journeys against all odds and for one another. Just oh, they capture my heart in a way that like nothing else does. And I love games specifically. What really sold me on this game were the campfire conversations that you have.
Mm,
It is the art of the campfire in any video game, but especially RPGs, is just I could do a whole essay on them. They are the moments where you really learn about each person. They're the moments where you see them interacting with one another and they bond with each other. And what solidified this game for me, honestly, in the top 10 was yes, the story was good, but more than that, I loved that I cared about the characters so immediately, and I could see they cared about each other, and that allowed me to care about the worlds. And it was just, ugh, I could wax poetic on this game all day. What about you?
Yeah, I have waxed poetic for multiple hours on my show.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll do it again. So
Yeah.
buckle up. No, I really think that this is just a clear case of like everything hitting at the max level for me and what I like about games. I like, I think that the story is absolutely brilliant. I even the parts later in the game that are a little bit divisive out there, I think they're brilliant. I really love the direction that it goes. I love that, things happen throughout the story that you wish didn't happen. Characters make decisions that you wish they didn't make. That's life. And I like to
Hmm.
see that reflected in stories too. The turn-based combat is incredible, as you said. I I'm a little bit more lukewarm on dodging and parrying, but I like that there's levels to it. Like I like that
Hmm.
while you're learning, you can learn to dodge with a more forgiving window and stuff like that. And really only felt that parrying was absolutely necessary when I was fighting the super bosses.
Hmm.
And the fact that I fought the super bosses is a testament to how much I liked the combat, but more specifically, how much I didn't want to stop playing the game. Like
Yeah.
I've already talked about like how I'm often juggling multiple games and I have multiple games waiting in the wings for when I finish the current games. And with Expedition 33, I didn't want to play anything else until I had completely rinsed the game of anything that I could do. I didn't get the
Hmm.
platinum trophy or whatever because I don't do collectibles. I don't care. But I
Hmm.
did all the bosses. I went to all the areas. I did all the campfire scenes, everything I could. Because I just didn't want to stop playing. And when a
Yeah.
game gets me like that, I know I'm invested. I think what it really comes down to is like the thing that hit me the hardest was the characters and the story. And like it's a tight group, it's a small party, it's five characters. Um and all of them are individually really strong, but the way that they make up the group, the way that they interact, um no one feels left out, no one feels tacked on. There's some characters in Final Fantasy X that I think get way less shine
Hmm.
than other main party characters. I don't feel like that in Expedition 33 at all.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I mean, and what you said, like this game made me cry the most. It like devastated me emotionally at several times throughout the game.
Oh yeah.
And that like intense buy-in in a game story and in characters and their fates is not a given for me. I don't know
Hmm.
how it is for other people, but like I'm not automatically invested in every group of characters and every storyline in every game that I play. But
Hmm.
I really think like the opening of Expedition 33 is so, it hits so hard out of nowhere that like I there was no way I wasn't going to be invested after that. The
Yeah.
the scene with the Gamage, just I knew nothing about what was coming, and that hit. I was like, what is this game? And then it
Hmm.
basically never took its foot off the gas after that, stuck the landing, and the ending was, the ending messed me up too. So we'll have to talk maybe after we finish. I want to know how the game ended for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is this was the game.
Yeah.
I had
This.
a I was like when this came out and I finished it, I was like, this is game of the year unless like Ghost of Yote absolutely blows me away. And Ghost of Yote is
Mm-hmm.
not even in my top 10. So that was basically it. It was written
Jeez.
for
Yeah.
several months now. This was going to be it.
Yeah. And I think another thing I appreciate, especially as we've been talking about the world of Final Fantasy X, we talked a lot, especially the first half discussion we had. Final Fantasy X is in a world that is unlike a lot of RPGs that we encounter. It's based in sort of South Asian, East Asian, and like sort of Pacific Islander influences among lots of like an amalgamation of religions. And I think what I appreciate is Final Fantasy X felt very specific because it felt like a different world than we often encounter. Um, while we encounter a lot of European, just sort of generalized European, like Western vibes and settings, I
Hmm.
think what I also love about Expedition 33 is it isn't just like generic medieval, like Western medieval or generic Western fantasy. It is so specifically French and which I'm like, it sounds funny to be like, I love that it's so French, but I appreciated that a lot because I
Hmm.
felt like rather than having, because they could have easily just been like, let's just make this a fantasy world and
Hmm.
not like grounded in anything, but because it felt grounded in French culture specifically, I think it added a um personality to it and a understanding of the world and a depth to the world that it would not have achieved had it just been a fantasy world.
Hmm.
So, um, talking about specificity in Final Fantasy X makes me appreciate also the specificity of the world they had in Expedition 33.
Yeah, absolutely. As you
Hmm.
were talking about the kind of French specificity, I just wrapped up Pokemon Legends ZA, which is also
Mm.
not in my top 10. Uh, that's set in Pokemon's version of Paris, and it doesn't feel French, you know? It's got some
Hmm.
songs with an accordion in it, and it's got,
Oh
cat people
no.
sitting at cafes out on the street, and it's got, legally not the Eiffel Tower or whatever in the middle of the city, but like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm in a French setting in that. And Expedition 33, they're from there, so they're able to inject their own experiences into the game in a way that, someone who's not from there would never be able to. But they they got the vibe, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that specificity is good. I think that as you were talking there, I was running through some like, because I think I'm a little higher on like the medieval fantasy setting than you are. But I
Hmm.
was running through like, okay, so the Dark Souls games, that's a, traditional Western European medieval setting, but there's a lot of weird stuff going on in those games that like there's
Hmm.
something extra in there. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, another one. But that's like real history. That's modern. That's modeled after real history. So you have an angle there too. Um, I was thinking back to something like the Elder Scrolls, and like if you don't dig so deep into the Elder Scrolls lore, it might come off as just like, well, I'm in this place
Hmm.
with castles and ruins and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I think that it does help. They got to have personality. However, they bring out that personality.
Yeah, for sure. Any sort of closing thoughts on the games of 2025, like what you saw as patterns, what surprised you, what you were super excited about as we wind down this section of the podcast?
Yeah, this has been a kind of like multi-year trend, but when I get to game of the year time and I start to make the list of the games that impacted me the most, I find myself trending away from the big AAA games that I was really excited about, because
Hmm.
I end up playing them and I like them. I liked Pokemon Legends, I liked Ghost of Yotei, but they didn't make a long lasting impact on me in the way that Expedition 33 did, or Silk Song, or Blueprints, or Wanderstop. Like a lot of the games that are making those personal impacts are um, the indie games, of course, because they're more able to chase those specific experiences that will like form that instant connection. And then sometimes we have a big AAA game that's doing something in a way that I've not seen before, we'll say.
Hmm.
So I think when I made my like most anticipated 2025 list, Ghost of Yotei I think was number one, because I was like, I loved Ghost of Tsushima. I can't wait to see the next one. And the next one came out and it was like, it's a good story. I had fun playing it. but I feel like I played that game before. It's not going to make as much of an impact the second time around. And when I look at the
Mm,
list, other than other than Monster Hunter, I knew what I was getting with Monster Hunter. Um, I think there's a surprise factor to things that go on the list, like
yeah.
either surprise in that I literally didn't know that it existed before it came out, or surprise that like, okay, I know what Silk Song is generally going to be, but I didn't know it was going to do all this, you know? So
Hmm.
I think that's one of the big takeaways is I'm never going to be that guy that says that big AAA games have nothing to offer and that they're all boring, repeated crap. And like that's one of the worst takes in gaming, I think. There's so
Hmm.
much good stuff being made by everyone of all sizes. But when I think about the impact games, those games are making that impact fewer and fewer times.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to wind up this discussion. Um, I am so excited to be because I still am finishing up a few other titles, and I'm so excited to like be revisiting this list for myself in the next couple of weeks as we continue to wind down 2025 and see what ends up sticking and what ends up, switching out in the last minute. But yeah, it's been an outstanding year. It's really cool because like for even if you don't care about like the game awards, for example, it's undeniable that we have games that are not triple A's showing up and getting multiple nominations and taking like for example with the game of the year like half the category in the sense of like taking up that time and attention from not just indie fans or like a smaller audience. This is like a wide audience. So
Hmm.
it's just really neat to see the ways that um, gaming as a whole is expanded. And I hope it continues to expand because that's just it's good for everyone in the
Yeah.
industry.
I think you can see a great deal of diversity in our lists too. Like not just
Hmm.
mine versus yours, but within our own lists of wildly different types of experiences. I mean, Monster Hunter next to Citizen Sleeper on my list.
Yeah.
You couldn't think of two games that are less alike than those two. And
Yeah.
gaming just really has so much to offer, even within the small scope of things we're able to have time to play, you know. Um, I I strongly feel that like there is no such thing as a bad year in video games anymore. Like I
Hmm.
basically just discredit anyone who's like, yeah, 2025 no good games. I'm like, what are you talking about? I will maybe never listen to another opinion you have. Like branch out, try
Yeah.
some new stuff. Like there's I couldn't play all the games that I want to play from 2025 in the next 5 years. Like
Hmm.
there's so much. So we're truly blessed to be in it as deep as we are and be able to like pull some of these deeper cuts out. I mean, you've got
Yeah.
stuff on my list I'd never heard of before, and I love that.
I totally agree. And yeah, I think that's the perfect note to end on as we move to the stuff we're excited about. Not just video games, although we will talk about a few games that we're playing. But what have you been not only playing, but like reading, watching, listening to, and engaging with outside of our sort of main topics of the show?
Yeah. Well, I've already kind of talked about the games a little bit. I did finish Ghost of Yote. I finished Pokemon Legends ZA. I liked both of them to a degree, although, they weren't in my top 10. They didn't make that, long lasting impact. And I already talked about Sectori. I've been playing that quite a bit. So
Mhm.
um, I've been reading Gardens of the Moon, which I talked about on our first Indiescovery episode. I
Yeah.
am mostly done with that. It is the book has followed a general, like a kind of flow where like the first several chapters were like, we're introducing you to the characters, the world. It's going to be a lot of stuff. Hold on to your butt. We'll like you'll get your feet under you eventually. And then this like the middle third of the book is like pieces in motion, and then the last third, which I'm in right now, is just nonstop downhill toward the conclusion, really hard to stop reading it. And I'm
Nice.
really, really excited about it. It's got so many cool fantasy ideas. Like it feels like it might be too much in the wrong hands. And it still might be, because it's book one of a 10-book series. And I already feel like this book has more ideas than all of Game of Thrones and the Wheel of Time had
Oh,
combined.
wow.
There's so much going on, but it's all really cool. And so far it's really well contained. It's a kind of dark fantasy. The characters that you mostly follow are part of an empire that's taking over the world. So like they're, you like them, but they're not doing good things out there, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, so really, really interesting. Fantasy fans, like we talked about in the first time, take note. I think it's really cool, and just it's already finished. The whole series is done. You don't have to worry about a
That's
George
right.
R. R. Martin situation. It's finished. You can read the whole thing. So I'm really loving Gardens of the Moon.
I have that actually on my sort of my what forget the name, Libby, on my Libby
Yeah,
app. I have that as a like the next books that I'll be trying to check out because
nice.
I am very excited to start a new fantasy series. I'm a
Hmm.
huge fantasy fan, so yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to read it and also talk to you about it.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to hear what you think. And, you need something else to read while you're waiting for the next Sanderson book to come out.
Oh
So,
my gosh, yeah.
yeah, um, definitely recommended so far. The only other thing I wanted to shout this out, because I think it's like a really, really well done series of podcasts that one of my friends did. Um, my friend Doug does a podcast called Nostalgium Arcanum, where every episode he has a different guest on, and they bring something to the show that they're nostalgic about, and they basically just celebrate that thing. I've been on the show several times. I did an episode about Pokemon, just like early Pokemon, Pokemania, that stuff. And I did an episode with him about the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring movie as part of a big series of
Mm,
him just going through all the Lord of the Rings movies and doing like 2.5 hour podcasts. So there's like it's like an, and The Hobbit too. So it's almost like a 10-hour series of podcasts going, not necessarily scene by scene, but like a close look at the movies, talking about the scenes, talking about why these scenes work. And at the heart of it,
mm.
it's a celebration of Lord of the Rings, which is my favorite movie series of all time. So I think that if you like Lord of the Rings, it's really nice to just go through those with Doug and all of his guests. And I was on one of the episodes, but that's not the reason I'm talking about it. So
As a huge like Lord of the Rings is one of those comfort movies for me. Like
yes.
I will put it on in the background, especially during like the fall and winter, and just have it playing because it is just so good. I do a like pay attention rewatch at least once a year.
Hmm.
I also love the Lord of the Rings. So I will definitely be listening to that because just hearing folks talk about it is just so much fun.
Hmm.
So cool. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah. Lord of the Rings for me too is it's one of those where like if I'm sick and I can't sleep, but I don't want to play games or do something where I have to think, like
Hmm.
I'll put the Lord of the Rings extended editions on all day long and
Yeah.
just kind of half pay attention, fall asleep, wake up, see what's going on, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I love those movies. I think they're perfect. Yeah, so that's a good series. So that's
Yeah.
basically what I've been up to. I'm playing so many games, but I don't need to talk about more games.
I will say, like, the first notes of like the Hobbiton theme concerning hobbits, I'm just
Hmm.
like, I hear the notes and my brain just sort of instantly, like the bat signal goes, it's just so, oh, yeah, it's so good.
Hmm.
For me, so my video games, I'll go through them quickly as well because we kind of already talked about them. Did a marathon where I finished Claire Obscure over Thanksgiving holidays. And just as a little mini shout out, if you are interested in watching the playthrough, I am now working through editing the playthrough. It's also why it took me a little bit longer because I was like not streaming it, but like recording the
Hmm.
gameplay and talking through it rather than just kind of cruising on my own. And so it took me longer, I think, because of that as well. But I will be putting those up on my YouTube channel if you want to watch some of the playthrough and see what I did. Um, God, that game is so good. And then I started Seance of Blake Manor and The Root Trees Are Dead, and I'm continuing with Quartet. So those are like, we'll see how far I get before the end of the year, but I am just excited because I'm playing some of the games I've really heard a lot of excitement around, and multiple folks have messaged me about these games. So, yay.
Hmm.
Uh, for reading, I am okay. So I know the Dungeon Crawler Carl series is pretty divisive. I feel like people either are obsessed and loved it or they hate it because especially the first book, maybe even two, maybe even three. It's a pretty crass series. Like there are some pretty crass moments. As you continue, I feel like they're done with relative intention, and I don't know if I'm just being gracious about it or, if it really is that way. I feel like it's done with intention. Um, I also think it's just done in a meant to be exaggerated, kind of like Marvel or kind of like almost like cartoons where it's like intentionally exaggerate like a Looney Tunes almost where it's like almost overtly violent to kind of like create that juxtaposition
Mm.
narratively. um but if you are interested in stories where basically this is about a guy and his cat, or his girlfriend's cat, I guess, but they end up surviving an apocalypse. They get put into a dungeon, and each book is like about a level of a dungeon that they're going down
Mm.
in this almost Hunger Games video game dungeon crawl where an alien corporation has like orchestrated this, and the earth is being used as the playground for this corporation and the setting for this like reality show for them.
Mm.
um Again, it is crass. There are some issues I have with some of the character development, but it is such a fast read. It is overall such a fun read, and I feel like there's a lot of heart in it where I am invested in the characters and I really want to know what's going to happen next. And as it's continued, I think the writing and what is going on has improved. Like I feel the growth from the author at least
Mm.
in terms of
Yeah.
like how he's setting up the story. And so I'm in it. And there's 7 books already. I think there's 10 planned, and so I'm on the 5th, which is The Butcher's Masquerade. Just started it, pretty excited. And yeah, it's been a good read. And
Nice.
so I would recommend it, honestly. But if you don't like it past the first one, I would say maybe try the first 2 chapters of like the second one. But the first book is, if you enjoy it, I think you'll like the rest of it. If you don't enjoy the first book, just don't go forward, probably.
Gotcha. I've like the name sounds familiar, but I didn't know
Mhm.
anything about this. So is it like novels? Is it graphic novels?
No, it is like just text full length novels.
Okay.
I feel like it could, I feel like this, if it's not already picked up, probably will get picked up for a TV show of some sort.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't ever become a live action TV show. I think it would honestly be really effective as an animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Like more adult animation, not like catered toward kids at all. It is
Mm.
very inappropriate for children. Um, it's super gross in a lot of cases as well. So that's why I couldn't see the live action going well if they ever chose it, but I could
Yeah,
see it eventually becoming like a cartoon of some sort.
that makes
Um,
sense.
yeah. But it's been a good read, and I think it's maybe the closest to, again, like a Marvel movie but book style that I've like really gotten into. So it's
Okay.
pretty cool.
Right on.
It's very quippy, like
Yeah.
outlandish solutions to boss battles, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been doing a ton of cross stitch. I've had my time open up where I'm like, I can do other crafts. And I don't want to just play video games. And so I've been finishing up an Undertale cross stitch that I've been like slowly progressing on for almost the better part of a year now. Um, and while I do my cross stitch, I like having Grey's Anatomy play, which is a
Mm-hmm.
total guilty watch. I know it's not good. but it is a really fascinating to show or a show to watch in the like framing of dang, this show came out in like the early 2000s
Hmm.
and there is a lot of drama, yes, but a lot of the drama kind of is catered towards major concerns of the time in society.
Mm,
So like
okay.
it's you get things like it, and this is like super depressing, but like you get like a hospital shooting that happens, you get like plane crashes, you get things where these natural and unnatural disasters, I guess, that are very much of those times. And as I've been half watching while I crochet and
Hmm.
cross stitch, um it's been interesting to kind of see that play out and be like, I remember when, this episode happened and I remember these other things happening in history and kind of making those connections. And so that's been really interesting to watch and think about, and see some of the ways they address like it's a show. It was one of the first shows I remember seeing like a lesbian couple on, honestly,
Mm.
that I watched regularly, and that was like super influential for me. And so and we have like Callie, who's a bisexual icon, and like, those kind of things. We're looking back, I'm like, oh, this actually was a big deal to me as a kid or teenager, I guess. And I didn't really realize it till I'm watching it now, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that actually was really cool when I was a teen, and I didn't realize how big of a deal that was. So it's been fun to have that on in the background.
That's cool. I've
Yeah.
never watched a full episode of the show, but like I have been there for like, you know, 10 minutes at a time, and like I can see why it's compelling to watch, and I can see why it was so popular. But it's cool to
Yeah.
hear that, certain aspects of it you're like, oh, they were a little bit forward thinking, or it's
Hmm.
like you said, it's interesting to see them tackle topical things within their setting. um I've just never
Hugely
watched.
problematic in a lot of ways. I
Yeah.
will, if anyone goes back to rewatch, I'm not saying it really aged great.
Yeah.
Lots of problems.
You will have that, especially with I don't know, like from that era. I think a lot of like sitcoms and stuff like that, and some of those
Yeah.
are a little hard to go back to in certain ways. um I think that you basically have to teach yourself how to like separate what was acceptable at a time, or like what was like maybe not acceptable but pushing a boundary. And even now, like from our 2025 lens, you're like, I can't believe they were pushing that boundary. Like, what were
Yeah.
they thinking? um you kind of have to separate that a little bit, or
Hmm.
uh you'll lose like the good parts of a lot of those things. um Thinking like comedies and sitcoms from that era especially, there's a lot where you're
Hmm.
like, they not only could they not do that, they probably wouldn't want to do that
Yeah,
nowadays.
they shouldn't do
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those where I'm like, yeah, you definitely watch it. You see where it hasn't aged poorly, but I think I've really appreciated the moments that I have seen where I'm like, man, this was really cool to see and I really did appreciate this. And
Hmm.
um like I think I was actually telling Sam, my partner, this, but I was like, oh, it's honestly really cool because there are these two characters in this show who, again, make a lot of problematic choices, but they are like ride or die, like women best friends, like adult women best friends in competitive environments supporting one another. And it's
Hmm.
just like you don't often see that in shows nowadays. And so there are like shining threads that you can kind of pull amidst a lot of the problematic stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also just a great guilty watch and a great thing to have in the background because there's far too many seasons,
Hmm.
and the arc of every episode is very similar. So you don't have to worry about missing
Yeah.
much if you get lost in something else.
Exactly. I remember like looking on Wikipedia about that show and being shocked at how long the show went. And then I was like,
Hmm.
I wonder how much those lead actors were getting paid by the end. And I was like, oh my God, good for them. Like they
Yeah.
they hit the jackpot there.
They really did. And yeah, I think that's it for my stuff I'm excited about. As always, if you want to get links to everything we've chatted about and what we will be chatting about, you can go to geeksandgrounds.com to sign up for the newsletter, find links to all our social channels and Discord, and hop in the conversation there. So, this brings us to the main topic of today's show, the Indiescovery, the games of December that we are really stoked about. I think what's the number? Somewhere between like 50 and 100 games launch every day on Steam, probably more at this point because that is an old statistic I remember reading. And so the goal of this is not necessarily to list every single game that's releasing this month because that's not super helpful. What we are doing is sharing just a handful of games that we're excited about, a little bit about why we're excited for them, in the hopes that maybe if you're looking for something new to play, you have some options. So let's go. I should have maybe ordered these in date order, but we have a couple of December 2nd titles. So,
Hmm.
um, Dave, if you wanted to kick off with your December 2nd title, we can go in date order.
Yeah. So I just found this game today, and I think Jill at the Indie Informer like had this in her calendar, I want to say, of upcoming
Hmm.
releases. If she didn't, congrats, free promo for you, Jill. You do good work. Um,
Yeah, Jill's amazing.
yeah. So Simogo, the developer, probably best known for Sayonara Wild Hearts and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, are putting out a collection of their older games. So it is 7 games in one collection, being
Mm.
put out on December 2nd, and I had never heard of Simogo before Sayonara Wild Hearts, and it turns out they have quite a long history before that. So there's all different kinds of genres in there. The Steam page lists like narrative games, puzzle games, platformers, rhythm games. There's all kinds
Oh,
of crazy stuff in there. So like I don't know how you could play Sayonara Wild Hearts and Lorelei and the Laser Eyes and not be like, these developers are cool. I like the way they think about games. And so if you want to check out their previous work, they have a collection, 7 games in one.
yeah. Wow. This looks awesome. And what a cool way to celebrate the history of the studio and just
Yeah,
to like also, I mean, the business person in me is like, this is really great because you're not like wasting this all of this work that you did, like
right.
releasing it on Steam and then making it available. But also, it's just like a really cool, like, yeah, just legacy to have, and which is aptly named because it's a legacy collection to like be
Hmm.
able to reflect on it. I also did not know. I'm seeing they made Year Walk,
Yeah.
and that was a game that I did not recall or remember that that was Simogo. So this is incredible.
Hmm.
Your walk
Yeah.
is really good.
I
Wow.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and say thank you, Jill, for putting this on my radar. I had no idea
Mhm.
Simogo was doing this, and it comes out tomorrow as we're recording this.
Oh my gosh. Perfect timing. My December 2nd pick. This was kind of I again it's I always feel weird about early access because early access can be really, really variable.
Hmm.
But with this game in particular, the demo was just so comprehensive and so fun and funny. I wanted to throw it in the mix. It's called Scrabdackle, and this is sort of a twin stick shooter meets Metroidvania, where you are a wizard who isn't very experienced, and you are put outside of your wizarding school into a world that you are not prepared for, and you're trying to find a way back, and on the way you're going to be saving the world is what I
Hmm.
presume. It's really cartoonish, it's really funny. um I will say the demo is still up as of this recording. Oh no, I think they took it down, so they might have taken it down since it's launching tomorrow. Um, and so if you get a chance, I would say check it out. It's very funny, and I think that's what made me so excited about it. Is humor is something I feel like we rarely get a ton of in games, and this is a very comedic game, and it almost feels like a very, very polished version of a like flash game I would have been super into as a kid, but it's
Mm,
like full polished game scale, but it has
mhm.
that flash game energy. Um, so yeah, that's Scrabdackle. It's very
Yeah.
cool.
I remember, I think it was the most recent Next Fest. I didn't get a chance to
Hmm.
play this, but a lot of people who played this demo had a lot of good things to say about it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very big demo. Um, Going in date order, the next, it's not technically an indie, but I'm just really excited for it, so I had to like sneak it in a little bit. Um, Octopath Traveler 0 is coming out on December 4th, and yes, this is a Square Enix game, definitely not an indie game, but I'm particularly excited about this because as a fan of turn-based RPGs, and a fan of town building, um like this sort of mini life sim building up a base kind of vibe. That is this attempt. Octopath Traveler 0 is blending turn-based RPGs and town building. You go out and explore, you level up, you are fighting your villains, and then you come back and you invite people to help rebuild the village that was destroyed, as because it's an RPG, of course your village gets destroyed at the beginning. And I'm just so excited for this. And yeah, I had to put it in because it's a blend of two of my favorite things.
Yeah. We're talking about RPGs all of November and
Yeah,
December. So, yeah, why not?
it's a
Um,
perfect fit.
yeah, there's a pretty sizable group of people out there that think that Octopath Traveler 2 is like the best game that no one talks about. So for
Mm.
for them, I'm happy they get Octopath Traveler 0.
Yeah, I have never played the second Octopath. I also was reading about it, and I guess Octopath Traveler 0 is technically a port from the mobile game experience,
Mhm.
and it's like super expansive. So if you are one of those rare folks looking for over like probably 100 hours of content at this point because the mobile game has been going for so long, um, I think Octopath Traveler 0 will be that game where it's like there's absolutely like in the 60s, 70s for sure, but you probably could get over 100 hours of play, I
Yeah.
would imagine, from the mobile game at least. And um the demo for Octopath Traveler 0 is out and it feels really good to play, I can say. So,
Mhm.
I wouldn't let the fact that it originated as a mobile game be like a determining factor because it did not feel like that. I only found out about it after I played the demo and I was actually looking up more information because I was so
Yeah.
excited from what I played with the demo.
Mhm. Yeah, and people who did like previews of Octopath Traveler 0 basically said like, I don't know, like if you squint you could see how it came from a mobile game maybe, but like
Mhm.
it doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like it's,
No.
full of microtransactions or something. It just feels like another Octopath Traveler game. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And I personally I think that the winter is one of the best times of the year to just like sink into a really big RPG. I have Dragon
Mhm.
Quest 11 that I'm gonna get back into as
Oh,
the weather gets colder.
nice.
So this a perfect one for people to check out.
Mhm. So, what's happening on December 8th then?
A lot of stuff. Remember the last Indiescovery where we were like, I think December is going to calm down a little bit. Nope,
Oh
it
my
didn't
God.
calm down at all. Um, so I have for my game for December 8th is Skate Story, which I think a lot of people know about by now. It's a Devolver published game, and just I don't know that a game has ever leapt out of a trailer quite the way that Skate Story did. Like it
Yeah.
might be the coolest looking game I've ever seen. And I played the demo during Next Fest. The visuals are great. It's a skateboarding game. The Let me just say the premise in case someone doesn't know. So in Skate Story, you play as a demon made of glass on a quest to earn your freedom by eating the moon. And you
God,
do
I love
so
it.
right. How can you not be invested? And then you look at the
Yeah.
screenshots and the skateboarding is really weighty and
Mhm.
impactful. It's not like a arcadey Tony Hawk, like you're doing 17 spins and you're grinding for minutes and stuff. It's not like that. Um, and it's just cool. Like the music is awesome, the visuals are incredible, the skating feels good, and it's just so cool. That's the word. I feel like I should have better words, but there's no better word to describe Skate Story than cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is. You look at it and it's just, yeah, it's undeniably cool. And I think that
yeah.
is the word for it for sure. I did play the demo during the last Next Fest. And I will say I'm hoping I can get good at the game because I was actually quite bad at the demo. Um, but it's one of those games where I think I am also just not great at skating games. Like I think
Mm,
there's a dexterity there that um is different for me than something like Silksong, which is a very dexterous game, but I've been
hmm.
able to like grasp. And so I'm hoping that once I get the full game, I can spend time with it and like settle in. Because I think with the demo, I hadn't found my groove exactly. And so I was just like crashing so much. And like when you crash, you kind of break really
Yeah.
spectacularly into like all of these shards of glass, which looks really cool, but gets a little old if you
Hmm.
do it too many times.
Yeah.
Um, but it does feel really cool. Like, kind of like actually just speaking of Smogo, like Sinor Wild Hearts, where if you get the momentum and you get the flow and like everything's kind of going past you, it just
Hmm.
feels cool, like you said.
Yeah. The control scheme is different. So like I think a lot of people have muscle memory for Tony Hawk or Skate or some other skating game, and this is just it's
Mhm.
entirely its own thing. So it's just going to take some time to get used to. Even for me, I was raised by Tony Hawk's Pro Skater as much as any other game series, and so it's hard to relearn how to skateboard in a video game. But I think this is worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so too. And I think um it's so unfortunate, but maybe not so unfortunate. I guess it's not a big deal, I think, to the average person, but I think about games that launch in December and I'm always like, "Oh, I wish they launched earlier just a little bit so they could have time to get like appreciation and gain momentum." But
Hmm.
um I feel like that's such a in industry like inside baseball kind of sentiment versus the average person. But it's one of those games where I'm like, "Oh, this is I feel like it's going to probably elicit some conversation because it's pretty highly anticipated, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah.
A quick shout out to also on December 8th, Angeline Era. This is by oh gosh, what's their name? I forget. It's like Analgesic Productions, I think is how you pronounce it. They did Anodyne and
Right.
Anodyne 2, which are just some of my favorite sort of 3D action adventure games. Um, Angeline Era is admittedly I don't quite remember the story from the demo, but it is an overworld where you're just exploring and you're going into each level, and it's like the combat is really unique because it's like bump slash combat. So you're not
Yeah.
doing like turn-based battles, you're not doing action where you're like away from the enemy and like slashing at it. You are actually bumping into enemies for your combat encounters. So it's a
Yeah.
really fun, really kind of retro mechanic. I feel like I have not played a
Yeah,
bump slash game in a
that's like
long time.
old East games from like the
Yeah.
90s. Yeah.
Yeah. And the graphics look like it as well. It very much looks like sort of early PlayStation kind of graphic style. You got the polygons. It's really nice. And I don't remember. I'm looking really fast at the Steam page. It's kind of light on describing exactly what the story is, but you are an ex-soldier allying with an angel to try and like breach the mothership that has crashed into the throne or is guarding the throne. So it feels like it's gonna eventually get to like the dethrone god situation. Like it feels like it's gonna get quite epic, but it looks really, really cool. And the Anodyne team, like I love those games, so I kind of at this point trust what they do, and I'm just
Hmm.
excited to hop in.
Yeah, the pitch for me, when I saw someone post about this on Blue Sky, the pitch is so you're going over that overworld in that game, and they say that it's basically a game where you look around and there's a bunch of things hidden in plain sight and you just don't know they're
Mhm.
there until you know what to look for. And that instantly brings to mind something like Tunic to me,
Mhm.
which like,
Mhm.
when one of those kind of like Blueprints, like when one of those games hits, like that could be your favorite game of all time
Yeah.
if that pays off the way that they're setting it up. So I'm definitely interested in this one too. It looks like a real sickos game, and I'm
It
excited.
does.
That might be one for the Notebook. You never know.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm very excited for it. And then the last game, which originally was going to launch in November, but then had a delay because they discovered a game sort of crashing bug, a bug that made the game unbeatable. Is the game unbeatable?
Mhm.
They're coming out on December 9th. And this game is about a world where music is illegal and you are a criminal, I guess, because you do crimes, you play music. And I remember seeing this back when like Twitter existed as Twitter and
R.I.P.
seeing yeah, RIP. And the gifs of this game were so striking. It has a very strong anime aesthetic, like kind of 90s anime aesthetic, I would say, and it's super graphic in its styling, like almost I would say I would compare it to like a persona, where it's like the UI is just striking and it's obviously UI and it's intentional because that is part of that stylistic play. And it looks really cool and it's a rhythm game.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm really excited to buy it. I don't know how much if you're into rhythm games. I guess we mostly talk
Yeah.
about puzzle games. So
Yeah, no, I love rhythm games, and this I remember this game had one of the coolest trailers I've ever seen. When it
hmm
maybe early this year or last year when I first saw it.
yeah.
So definitely made an impression. I'm I'm up for. I feel like we're in like kind of a renaissance of people doing cool stuff with rhythm games. Like I've become aware of multiple rhythm game RPGs over the last couple years.
hmm
You know, we have this one where I'm not sure exactly like what else there's going to be with the game, but the rhythm part of it looks cool. The music sounds awesome. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so many
Yeah, we've
cool
got
games all in
a
one
lot.
week.
It's wild. Yeah, and it's funny because it's like, "Oh, December, everyone's going to wind down," and that definitely wasn't the case because this is also not even all of the games releasing. This is
Yeah.
just like the select few. Um if you would like to see more of the games releasing, definitely check out. But the list is still curated; it's just a wider list. Check out the release calendar on geeksandgrounds.com, and I think that is it. Let's head on over to finish out this podcast with the overview for this month's brew, Final Fantasy X. Um, we're finishing the game in 2 weeks. We're going to have the discussion, the deep dive. And so before we move into that, and as if you're following along in terms of playing approximately the same pace outlined in the newsletter and in the playthrough guide, there are some things that we'd love to highlight for you to keep in mind as you play to kind of prime your experience a little bit so you know what to look for so you can hopefully get sort of the most out of your understanding. Um, Dave, you kicked it off with some outstanding notes where I literally read the notes you put in when I was going in to put in my notes and I was like, yeah, that's it. That's great. No notes to your notes. And so I'd love for you to kick off some of what you put because I think these themes that we're moving into, I think the game starts us off with kind of a set of themes that we
Hmm.
start to grapple with. And there is a pretty distinctive turning point as we begin the second half, and pretty distinct chain of events that begin that really shift what we start to think about or continue
Hmm.
to think about as we play. And I'd love for you to start with the
Yeah.
diving in.
So I think when we first started this, I said one of the most interesting things to me was the concept of sin, the monster that there's this cycle of destruction with sin, and we see how the people live under that constant threat of destruction.
Hmm.
And one of the cool parts that the second half of the game explores is how do the people in power deal with that? How do they, what is their stance on all of this? How are they, um, try to say the way to say this without saying too much. Just generally, like, what's their stance on this, and what are they doing to help? What are they maybe not doing to help? And so you can then take that, so you see them, and you see the way that they kind of go along with all of this, and what their role is, and stuff like that. But then also, I think that you can see some really smart analogs to the ruling class in the real world based on what they do in the game when faced with this specter of destruction. And you can extrapolate that into anything that you want. It can be war, it can be natural disasters, it can be pandemics, it can be anything like that. It can be global warming, it can be anything like that. I think that this game is really smart about the way that the people in power, the real decision makers, about how they feel about it and what they're doing. So
Hmm.
that's something that I think is interesting. Um, and then another one I guess I'll throw out is we spent the first half of the game learning the different characters and where they stand with their faith, and especially because they're on this holy pilgrimage. And we started to see at the end of that first half section, like, a little bit of like the chips in the faith when they're confronted with things that go against how they were brought up within that.
Yeah.
And that just continues through the second half. And sometimes faith is not shaken, faith is wrecked. And then what do you do after that? Where do you find your purpose now after that?
Mm.
So
Hmm.
I'll start with those two. Those are two big ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Going off of that, I think we talk a lot about also the ideas of this cyclical pattern, right? This thing, this repetition, this sort of stagnation in this world of spirit as a whole. And you see it both as like the wider problem of sin, but also systemically, there's a lot of stagnation happening.
Hmm.
And so as you're playing, paying attention to the ways that this stagnation, whether it's in the characters or whether it's in the systems, stays, or how it starts to shift, like you were mentioning, when your worldview is shaken. Do you choose to change? How do you change? Do you resist it? Do you eventually give in after some thought? Like, really paying attention to the different degrees each character reacts to this, as well as what happens when you see um, yeah, some of the leaders of particularly Yevon and their thought processes behind this cycle and this pattern and what they think of it. And
Hmm.
um I feel like we'll get different levels of detail from different characters. Like you mentioned earlier, uh we'll see that more from some of our main characters, and some of the side characters will not get as much time. But I think every character does have a slightly different way that they approach a lot of these worldview changes and that they react to it. And it is really interesting to see, based on the history and what we know of each character and what they believe, and how they are moving forward based on what we start learning.
Hmm. You also can see when faith gets challenged, or at least your when your situation gets challenged, we'll say, you can see, like, where does that faith really lie? Where does it live? Is it
Mm-hmm.
is it a deeply personal thing that you keep inside? Is it a community thing? Does faith lie in the teachings, like in the scripture? Does faith, is it something even deeper than that? Like, when one aspect of it gets threatened, does the whole house of cards come down, or do you find strength somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a big thing in the second half of Final Fantasy X, as faith is continually challenged, um, from different angles, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting the way they do this through multiple avenues, through multiple main party characters. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Hmm. And I think I've only started kind of teasing these thoughts, but I think there are some interesting differences to consider between first, like the difference between faith and also the difference between hope,
Hmm.
and then going sort of down a carrot in our taxonomy here, we have hope, and then like the different types of hope that we encounter, whether it's like an optimistic hope, maybe a more nihilistic hope, if you can argue that it exists,
Hmm.
or a resignation. And so I think thinking through the concepts of hope and faith as a whole and how you see those presented, and not just the characters, but maybe if you've been in, I feel like we've all lived in situations now where we've seen cataclysmic things happen or are happening, where you might lie on that, I think is maybe an interesting point of reflection you could have while you play the game.
Agreed.
I also feel like you mentioned purpose. And that's something that as we play, we've talked a lot, especially about Yuna and her purpose and her
Hmm.
sense of duty. Um, but we have the Guardians, and they also have a sense of duty as well, and they have a purpose. And I think thinking about those purposes and what does it mean to make your life mean something in the face of um, really bad odds. Like,
Hmm.
we know that the odds of defeating sin pretty bad. It's like we know sin comes back. What does that mean for your purpose? Does it mean anything if you know eventually sin cycles back?
Hmm.
If you think it means something, what does it mean? And particularly relating to like death and immortality, I would say think about those as themes as well as we move into this section.
Hmm. Yeah, purpose plays a strong role in a lot of that. Multiple
Hmm.
in multiple ways too, like different characters, and it can change. And I for some
Hmm.
characters it does change in the second half of Final Fantasy X,
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah.
Um, One of my favorite things about the second half, especially as I'm replaying it now and it's really fresh in my mind, is the first half of the game. We got to know our characters, and we basically spent the first half learning about the world through Titus,
Hmm.
as he learns about it. And you learn about what Yuna's journey is all about. You learn about her role in the society. You learn about what drives her. You learn about Aren and Lulu and the other characters and stuff. And in the second half of the game, I feel like Yuna takes over. It's clearly Yuna's story. And there's a part, I'm not going to like say too much, but there is a part where Titus is like, I'm on the ride with you now. This is your story. And
Hmm.
Yuna gets a lot more shine in the second half of the game, as she goes through some of these like internal and external conflicts that we kind of touched on with those themes. And so a long time ago, we said this is like a dual protagonist, or like even a situation where like you're not even playing as the protagonist, you're watching and you're following
Yeah.
them. But you really get that like that strong emphasis on Yuna's character in the second half, and it's really
Hmm.
good, I think.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there's a reason why for me Yuna is one of my favorite characters just as a whole in Final Fantasy. I think she is incredibly well developed, and I remember being so mad cuz some of the reviews, especially at the time of launch, weren't very flattering to her. I feel like
Mm.
there were through lines of people who felt she was too one dimensional, too passive. Um, and I will not bury the lead. I will say I firmly disagree with that.
Mm.
And I think the second half of the game is where you see her, like you said, really shine and really come into her own in a lot of different ways. Um, but it also, she doesn't lose that softness and that vulnerability and that
Hmm.
kindness. And I think that for me is what makes her character so interesting and exciting, and just one that I continuously just like look towards as just a great character to pay attention to. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that in the first episode, or maybe when we were doing the walkthrough in the second episode, I think that I said that I thought Yuna was a relatively flat character, not to say a bad character, but just not a lot
Hmm.
of dynamic character movement in there or growth. And playing it again, I don't think that that's correct. It's just not as obvious as like a character who starts out evil and ends the game good or something like that. It's a lot more
Mm-hmm.
subtle with Yuna. If you look at what she wants at the beginning of the game versus what she wants at the end, not much changes there. Like when you look at it at that surface level, but there's a lot of conflict and turmoil under the surface,
Hmm.
and the second half of Final Fantasy X digs into that a lot. So even I'm evolving my take on, like, I guess, how much nuance there is to Yuna this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really excited. This game, again, we've already talked a lot about how this game means a lot to both of us, and so I think it'll come to no surprise to folks as they listen to this episode and the next, like how excited we are to share our thoughts on the ending.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I am really excited to get into it because I think upon this playthrough, what I'm realizing is in the face like what you said in terms of nuance. I think especially in its conversations on religion, um I came into it, I think, thinking it was more like uh what's the word? I think it had I originally came into it thinking it had a more definitive stance on religion. Playing it now, I feel like it's actually a lot more nuanced than
Hmm.
I went into have gone into it previously. And I think thinking about it through playing it for Geeks and Grounds and like trying to be more um attentive as I played through, I feel like, oh, this is actually for me, I think I said in the last, I'm like, oh, this is critiquing religion. I absolutely believe it's a critique of religion, but I think it also does something more in addition to that that isn't necessarily a critique of religion. In fact, it maybe shows an appreciation of it that I'm excited to
Hmm.
delve into and get into when we talk next time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's the benefit of doing it the way that you do it on the show here, is those things get the time to have those conversations.
Hmm. So I think that might be a good, you know, primer for everyone diving in and to consider and to think about as we finish off this game this month. Just as a bit of housekeeping, the Hangout is happening on December 20th. That is a Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific. It's a little earlier than normal in the month, but that's because we've got the holidays coming up. So I figured, and also everyone said in the last hangout, the 27th would probably not be an ideal time because we'll all be just relaxing, hopefully, after the holidays.
Hmm.
So, December 20th, again, if you want to hop in to the Discord, the link is at geeksandgrounds.com. Just as we finish up, Dave, remind us in case someone wasn't paying attention and forgot, where can folks find you and your work?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you again for allowing me to be your co-host, your partner on this Final Fantasy X journey. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So thanks again. Um, I'm the host of Tales from the Backlog, a podcast where each week I do a deep dive on one game that I've played. It's always me with a different guest. We have talked about blueprints quite a bit in this episode. So Jenny was my guest for that episode. That's a good place to start if you want to check out the show. That's also a good showcase for the spoiler policy, where we do
Hmm.
not spoil games for the first half or so of every episode, which is usually about an hour. So any episode is fair game. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil things for you right away, and we'll warn you when that's going to happen. So that's Tales from the Backlog. Coming up in December, on December 3rd, is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which I finally finished
Mm.
and did an episode on.
Yay.
And December 10th is Legend of Grimrock 2, a really cool indie first person dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
Two really cool games, two very different games. So
Hmm.
that's what's coming first half of December.
Yeah, so definitely go follow. I know I'm really excited. I've had your Claire Obscure episode bookmarked on my sort of podcast TBL, I guess, to be listened. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I'm very excited to finally get the chance to dive into that because it's a long time coming. And I am
Yeah.
so excited to finally hear what other people are thinking and have thought about the game now that I
Hmm.
finally finished it.
Absolutely.
Yay. And again, if you also forgot where to find more information about Geeks and Grounds, you can go to geeksandgrounds.com. You can listen to us on all of your favorite podcast services. You can find the Discord at geeksandgrounds.com as well, and the newsletter sign up where every other week, I guess. Yeah. Every other week, you will get a newsletter that summarizes everything. It has everything you need to hop into the club, get started, whether you just like listening to the podcast and playing asynchronously, or if you want to jump in the conversation in the Discord. Um, with that, I hope that you and your guardians are prepared for the final leg of the pilgrimage, Dave. And we will see you all in 2 weeks with the finale for Final Fantasy and 2025. See y'all later.
Bye.